And welcome to this module on Robocode. Judging by the student evaluations of the course, Robocode turns out to be one of the things that they think they're going to remember most about this course in the next 10 years. It's definitely one of the highlights of the course for folks. I didn't realize it was going to turn out that way when I first started assigning it, but now I'm starting to understand, because Robocode is a very intriguing mixture of programming and gamification. In fact, it makes the process of programming very much like a game, in the sense that instead of using a joystick to manipulate something on screen, you're using code to do it. So I think that many of you, even if you're not into video games or whatever, you're going to find the interactive nature of Robocode and the kinds of algorithms that you're going to put into play, kind of fun and engaging. Plus, there'll be a competition in the class where you can compete against each other. So I'm hopeful that you'll learn a lot about Java from this, a lot about Eclipse, somewhat about Robocode, a lot about using third-party systems, and a little bit about open source programming. Okay. Finally, I'm really hopeful that you'll have some fun doing it. Okay. So Robocode turns out to be a game engine. Basically, the idea creates this framework into which you will develop a single Java class, could be a set of classes, but normally it's a single Java class that implements a robot, and then a robot is defined as being basically an object that can move, that can use radar to look around for other robots on the playing field, and can fire its gun. And your essential task is to be the last robot standing. You can gain points by not dying. You can gain points by hitting other robots. You lose points if other robots hit you. If you lose too many points, you die. Basic kind of thing. Robocode comes with a whole bunch of predefined robots, which is really nice, because as part of the learning process, I'm going to have you try to gradually beat more and more robots, so you can kind of incrementally improve your skill in small steps. What you're going to need to do to basically get started with this project is learn how to download and install the Robocode package, know how to run a match at a very basic level, then use Eclipse to define your robot, or basically to develop your robot, which means writing the code, running the code against other robots, and seeing what happens, and then altering your code to do better and better. Okay. Along with that, you're going to need to understand how to make the fundamental, or use the fundamental mechanisms of Robocode, which is how do you move around the playing field? How do you find other robots? How do you move the gun and fire, bullets in a certain direction? Okay. And then when you get all that stuff together, then you're going to start trying to make a competitive robot that can beat others. Okay. So what we're going to do today, the first thing I'm going to do is take you to the page for Robocode and go through the links there in some detail so you get a sense for what Robocode is about. Then we'll just download the Robocode package, run it from the command line so you can see what that looks like, and then finally we'll build a really simple robot so you can just see the basics of Eclipse integration. There's a couple gotchas there to get it set up correctly, and I'll just show you how all that works. Okay, so here we are at the home page for this particular module, Robocode. And the links I have, it's worth going through all of them. The first one is to the actual Robocode homepage. The most important link there that you're going to want to look at is the download Robocode link. And if you click there, you'll see you can download the 1.7.44 setup.jar file. We'll get back to that in a second. Going back to the homepage, there's also the Wikipedia entry for Robocode. This is useful to give you kind of the one-page overview of Robocode. I definitely recommend you read this. And the next link is to a very nice article about Robocode called Rock'em Sock'em Robocode that was written actually in 2002, so 10 years ago. And it was written by some folks it was written to describe this initial version of Robocode that was actually developed by researchers at IBM. Okay, and even though the details of installation and stuff has changed since then, so you won't want to look at that stuff so much. What's great about this article and makes it worth reading even 10 years later is a very nice description of the anatomy of a Robocode robot and the standard kinds of things you can do with the robot to make it behave. Okay, so I definitely take a read through this article. The other thing I think is interesting and worth noting is how old this project is. This is an open source project, and I think it illustrates one of the potential of open source in that this code, this system, was initially developed by researchers at IBM in the early 2000s, and at a certain point, their priorities changed and they moved on to other things, and they released it into the community, and a bunch of Robocode players basically picked it up and continued development of the software and enhanced it a great deal from what the IBM folks had done. And that's continuing even up to today. In fact, right now, I believe that the set of developers of the Robocode framework are actually one or two generations beyond the set of programmers who took it over from IBM, and certainly different from the set of programmers that were at IBM. Okay, so this is what you can do if you get involved with an open source project or build an open source project. You can actually kind of bequeath it to a new generation of programmers who want to continue keeping the code alive and enhancing it and so forth. So I think I've had excellent interactions with the Robocode community. It's a great community. People are good to work with, and I think you'll enjoy them. Okay, so the next link is to the RoboWiki, and this has a cornucopia of articles and resources on Robocode. Really too many, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of articles. And so what I did in order to make it digestible is I gave you some links to a half dozen pages within this wiki that will help you kind of get started. So there's, of course, the Getting Started, the Robocode Basics page. There's an FAQ page. Okay. There's a page on radar. That's one of the fundamental components. You got to understand how radar works in order to do a Robocode robot. There's a page on movement, which gives you some, sub-pages about the way that you do movement. Targeting, which is moving your gun around to make sure it's pointing where you want it. Then there's a page on using Eclipse. Okay, all these links up here. That's important to read through, and I'm going to actually show you in a little bit of detail how the Eclipse IDE works with this. And then there's another page with lots and lots of different tutorials that you can look through if you'd like. Now I want to point out at this point that there is a lot of published Robocode code out there, and so it might be tempting, at least initially, to think I'm just going to download a bunch of robots and kind of combine the code together, build this kind of new Franken robot, and it's going to be so awesome, and it's going to kill everybody else's robot because I'm building upon all these algorithms that other people have developed, anti-gravity and wave surfing and all this kind of stuff. Okay, I highly encourage you not to do that for many reasons. Okay, one of which is because the purpose of this assignment is for you to wade in and build Java code and learn how to incrementally develop robots from scratch. Okay, there's much less learning involved by just cutting and pasting code together that you don't understand from people who've been working on Robocode for years and years. Okay, so the pedagogical purpose of this assignment, which is to give you more facility with Java and with Eclipse via an engaging and fun activity, is completely subverted if you start doing that. Secondly, I'm not grading you based upon how good your robot is. Okay, so you're not going to get a better grade because you've got some, cranking great robot. Okay, in particular, if I see some robot that's got very sophisticated algorithms, I'm going to call you into my office and ask you to explain it. If you can't explain it, and if that code is not attributed, then you've cheated, essentially, and that will have a kind of a disastrous impact on your grade. Okay, so don't do it. Just look at code. I highly encourage you to look at code, see what other people are doing, but don't copy the code. Just build a robot. All of you guys are starting from scratch. None of the robots in this class are going to be that sophisticated, and it doesn't matter. Just for fun. Okay? So make your robot a reflection of what your actual capabilities are. Make sure they follow the coding standards. I have fairly low threshold for the capabilities of the robots to get a good grade. I'm not really interested in that so much. So just make it a fun experience. Do what you can. It might win, it might lose. doesn't really matter. Okay? All right, so that's all I have to say about that. There's another page. You need some trigonometry, so if you don't remember trigonometry, you can go to this page. And then I have a page about some more specific coding standards for your Robocode robots. You should look at that to make sure that you're doing that as well. Okay, and then there's there's more links down here. You can follow them. I kind of like the Secrets of the Robocode Masters series. That's kind of got some interesting articles. Again, more advanced stuff. Not because you're actually going to implement that stuff in your robot, but just because this is kind of a fascinating domain, and you might just want to explore that for the fun of it. Okay, so that's what the page looks like, and I'll publish the assignment quite soon. I haven't quite done that yet. But I think the next thing I want to do is just download the Robocode framework and show you how that works. So we go to the download page. And I will click on this link, and I actually won't click on the link because I've already clicked on the link once. And what you'll get once you've clicked on that link is this Robocode 1.7.4.4 setup.jar. And the idea is you can either double click this if your environment provides it, or you can go to, you can bring up a terminal. And you can say cd downloads java -jar robocode setup.jar, and that runs this installer, which looks like this. Okay, and it asks where you want to install it. You definitely just want to install it someplace without any spaces, so we'll say yes. And then we get this Robocode does not exist. Would you like to create it? So we say yes. And sorry, everything's going on my other monitor. To start Robocode, browse to users Johnson Robocode, then double click robocode.sh. Okay, so we've got it installed. And so we can go to ..cd robocode. Okay, and we get this kind of stuff here. And so we can say robocode.sh, and we have some stuff come up, and this is a little irritating. Okay, actually what I'm going to do is get rid of my other monitor. Okay, so now we have the Robocode system running. And I'll show you. So we have this up. In fact, what I'll do is I'll just quit and restart, so it comes up. So now you can see it come up the way it would in your screen. So this comes up, and what we can say is we can pull down the battle menu, say new, and as I said before, it comes with a bunch of different robots, and so we can just add a few robots, and then we can say start battle, and you can see we got these 3 robots cruising around. And we've got some stuff. We can pause it if we wanted to kind of see the state or start it again. We can slow things down if we want to have a better understanding of what's actually happening. We can speed it up if we just want to get to the end of the battle, and so forth. Okay, so that's important to do the first time you download Robocode, just to make sure that the Robocode system is installed correctly and things are okay. It's amazing this thing is still going. Okay, yeah, so it had to do with several different rounds, and we see that the fire robot is the best, and so forth. Okay, so that's that. And the next thing that we want to do is create the most simplest robot possible in Eclipse, so you can see how that works. Okay, so let's bring up Eclipse. Okay, and so what we're going to do first is we're going to say new Java project, and we'll call this we'll call this, for reasons which will become clear later, position 01 as the project name. And we'll click finish. Okay, and the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to add the Robocode jar file to the build path. so that this project knows about Robocode. And we do that by right-clicking on the project name, clicking Properties, Java Build Path, Libraries, and then we're going to say Add External Jars. And then we go find our Robocode directory, which in my case is in my home directory, then in the lib subdirectory, and we'll add robocode.jar. Okay? And now I'm going to show you kind of a nice technique that's possible in Eclipse, which is that I'm going to add the Java docs associated with all of the classes and methods in this Robocode jar file to this, attach it to the jar so that in Eclipse we'll be able to see documentation about any of the Robocode classes easily within the browser. And the way that I do that is I click java.location. I'll double click that actually. And I'm going to say the location path turns out to be in Robocode, and then there's a javadoc directory. So I'll just click that. So users Johnson Robocode javadoc is the javadoc location. I'll click OK. Now we can see that we've attached javadocs to robocode.jar. Now this works not only for Robocode, but in general, whenever you download a third-party library that you're interested in using for development, if convenient, this is a really nice thing to do. Attach the javadocs if they're packaged with the system, which should be the case, to the jar file, and then as you're working along, if you want to understand more about some of the third-party libraries, classes or methods that you're using, you can get at them really easy. Okay, so I'll click OK. So now I've got the Robocode jar file attached with us, and I'm going to create a new class. Okay, and in Robocode, our Robocode developer guidelines, we need to develop all of our Robocode robots within a package where the package name is a three-letter name indicating the user. Okay, so I'm going to assign those to you guys and send out. But for me, since my middle name is Meadows, my three-letter package will be PMJ. And then I'm going to call this particular robot position 01. And then I'll click Finish. Okay. So now I've got the position 01 Java class within the PMJ package, which is what I want. And it's going to turn out that all I need to do to implement a robot that doesn't do anything except just exist, okay, is have it extend robot. That's the very simplest robot, and what we can do is we can just make sure that we import robot from the Robocode package. Now this thing compiles, and if you think about it a little bit, how could this possibly implement an actual robot? And the reason is because the way the Robocode development environment is implemented is that when you extend robot, you're inheriting from the robot superclass default versions of all the methods required to run a robot. Okay, it's super cool. So basically, when you implement a class, what you're going to end up doing is overriding some of those superclass methods, okay, that provide the behavior of a robot to make your robot doing something differently from the most default robot of all, which is this one right here. Does that make sense? I hope so. Okay. So now if we wanted to run this robot, basically what we can just do is click the Run, and we'll say we want to run it as a Java application, and we'll click OK. And you can see we got a little error here, but now we're getting Robocode coming up as a result of running this system. And what you might think to yourself is, there must have been a main method, static main method associated with that class so that we get this behavior. Okay, so now we've got this interactive screen come up, and we say we want to have a new battle, but lo and behold, we have no robots. Okay, and that's the first kind of bug that you run into, or the first gotcha associated with Eclipse programming, is that if we want to do development, we like to be able to run our robots against the sample robots, but they don't exist when we do it this way. So I'm going to show you right now how to fix that. So we're going to say cancel, I'm going to click this, and we're going to get rid of that whole development environment. And what we have to do is we're going to select the project, go to properties again. I'm sorry. we're not, sorry, what we're going to do is we're going to go to run configurations. Okay, so this is the place where we want to tell that this Robocode run environment needs to think that it's starting from the Robocode directory. Okay, so what happens is when you run a program in Eclipse, it has to know, it has to start from someplace. There must be some kind of home directory for this thing to be running in, and it will by default assume it's the project's home directory, which we know is, like in my case, Johnson Documents Workspace, blah 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 blah. Okay, but if that's the home directory, then the Robocode environment has no way to figure out where the robots are actually located. So what we do to fix that is specify the home directory as we tell Eclipse when they run Robocode that it should set up the environment such that what the environment thinks the home directory is the top level of Robocode, and then it knows how to go traverse from the home directory to find the actual robot implementation. So we start this up again. We don't get that little red error message. We say new, and lo and behold, now we have all of our default robots. Okay, since we started it up in that home directory, it can now navigate down, find the robot subdirectory, find all these things. Okay, the only problem here is that we don't have our robot that's under development. Okay, so it's kind of hard to test our robot when we can't actually find it. So the way that we fix that is we actually click out of that menu, but we keep Robocode running. We go to Options, Preferences, Development Options. And in this screen, so now we want to tell, once Robocode is running, we want to tell it where it should look for our particular robot. And in my Eclipse, the place where these projects are located is in Documents Workspace, and then what did I call this thing? I call it Position 01. And then the bin directory within that, okay? Because inside the bin directory is actually our class path. Okay, or that would function as a class path because we've got now the package directory, and inside that we've got the actual class files. So we'll select the bin directory, okay? And so now under development options in the preferences of the Robocode environment, we've got that. So what we're going to say is finish. And now when we click new battle, lo and behold, in addition to all the sample robots, so we can add corners and crazy, we're also going to add our position 01 robot. Now you'll notice that little star next to it. What happens is if you package up a robot for distribution, you package it up in a specialized way. It has some documentation that would show up down here and so forth. And if you haven't packaged it that way, then the Robocode environment puts a little asterisk next to it indicating that this is a development version. It doesn't have some of the other like meta data about the robot. For our purposes, don't worry at all about that. It doesn't matter. The robot will still run. It's just kind of some indication to you from the Robocode environment, but not a big deal. Okay, so now let's start the battle. And you can see there's our poor little robot, okay? And since it doesn't know how to move, it doesn't know how to aim, it doesn't know how to fire, and it doesn't know how to use its radar to find anybody, all it really knows how to do is be randomly placed someplace in the directory. You see it's already been killed. Okay, so we speed things up. It gets put randomly someplace. Well, actually not yet. So basically, this is a battle between corners and the other robot, and my robot shows up for a couple seconds at the beginning of the rounds before it's dispatched in a fairly ugly manner by one of the other robots. Okay, so that's how that works. We'll click stop, and I think that's basically all you need to know. Right? Bring up Eclipse, define a project. Just to quickly review, in the properties directory under Java build path, libraries, add robocode.jar. Oh, add the Java docs. Let me just show you how the Java docs work. Okay, so if we do this extends robot and we highlight that class, we go to Java doc, the JavaDoc tab in this bottom window, here you can notice the JavaDocs associated with that particular class. It'll work for any of the methods, anything else. You'll find the JavaDocs down here. Okay, so nice little way to kind of speed up your development process. All right, so we have that. Also in the run configuration, just to review, to make sure that all of the sample robots show up, you go to Arguments, and then under Working Directory, you click Other, and then you put the path to the top level directory of your Robocode installation. Finally, if we do a run, okay, we have to go to Options, Preferences, Development Options, and for each new robot project that we build, we're going to have to add that into this area so that when we try to do a new battle, we'll be able to see it. Okay, there's lots more about Robocode that you'll be learning about. I think you'll have a lot of fun with this project, and we'll definitely have a little competition in class for bragging rights at some point along the time, but don't worry so much about having the best robot. Just use this as an opportunity to learn about Robocode programming and have fun while you do it. Aloha.